A common criticism you see in the film community in general is when there's a movie that's boring, usually a blockbuster movie that's pretty safe, people say they hate how formulaic it was. People hate formulaic movies. Well, I wanted to question that theory. Do people actually hate formulaic movies? I mean, yes, of course they hate formulaic movies, right? Everyone hates formulaic movies. When you're watching a movie, you want to feel like you're experiencing a specific story. And if there are specific beats that the screenwriter feels like they have to hit, it's going to ruin the experience because you're going to feel like you're on a track, right? Blake Snyder, the writer of Save the Cat, which some screenwriters treat as almost a screenwriting bible, he literally describes movies as emotion machines and calls them a math problem, which is a formula, right? So there we go. That's our answer. Yes, people hate formulaic movies, and that's why they hate them. Okay, that's the end of this video. Of course, as always, thanks for watching. I mean, let's just take a look at some 3-act structure movies that I'm sure are just going to feel formulaic and boring. What are the most common ones that come up when you search it? Well, I mean, you have Star Wars. Okay, I guess that one's pretty good. The Matrix. Okay, yeah, I guess that's also, I like The Matrix. The Wizard of Oz. Yeah, a movie that was made nearly 100 years ago and people still like. I'd say that kind of works. Interstellar, a more recent movie. In fact, there's a lot of recent movies that use this structure and still are good. Avatar 2, I would say, is good. Top Gun Maverick, people really liked. Godzilla Minus One just came out and people are raving about that. In fact, even if you want to look at like some best picture winners from recent years, Everything Everywhere, yeah, that had a 3-act structure. Coda, yeah. Nomadland didn't, so I guess there's that one, which is kind of the exception to the rule. But, even Parasite definitely did, and that's, I would say, a great movie. There's lots of great movies that have 3-act structures and you follow a lot of, if not all of the Save the Cat beats and are still fantastic. So maybe it isn't the formula that is the actual issue. So what is it then if it's not the formula itself? And why does it matter? Well, I think it matters to go through this and figure out this discussion because, if people don't understand what they actually like or don't like, when people complain about formulaic movies, perhaps Hollywood will finally start listening to people and still make bland, soulless movies, but, without the formula, which people will also still hate. Not to mention, I think if people say, I hate formulaic movies, let me look up some non-formulaic movies and see those. Maybe they're not going to like them either and think that they just don't like movies at all. So, yeah, I do think that it's an important discussion to have. So, okay, what is it then? If it's not the formula itself, what do people mean when they say they hate formulaic movies? Again, no one said that they hated formulaic movies coming out of Top Gun Maverick. At least not a lot of people did. Maybe some people did. Your mileage will vary. But a lot of people, even if they didn't like that movie, it wasn't because of the formula. So what could it be? Well, one thing I thought of is it helps create cliches, right? Save the Cat, one of the things it tells you is to state the theme on page 5. Well, there's only so many ways to do that. This is why it's become a cliche to have someone, a teacher early on in the movie point out, the theme of the movie while they're just, talking about something that's seemingly irrelevant to the rest of, what's going on. They could be talking about anything. Like in Hereditary, there's a specific moment where the teacher states the theme of the movie right there. That's become kind of a cliche. Hereditary, great movie, but that was a cliche in a great movie. That's just one example I thought of, and obviously there's plenty of examples of things like this happening, but at the end of the day, if there are specific moments you're supposed to go through, and screenwriters consistently go through each one, there's really tons of different ways you can do certain things, but it is likely that, minds are going to think alike in certain things. That is how cliches tend to happen. Usually they happen because it's actually a smart idea, but it works really well. But because it works well, a lot of different screenwriters use it. So that's part of it. I think that could be definitely an aspect. Another aspect I think about is the likable hero. It's the title of the book, right? Save the cat. You have to have a save the cat moment. Although some people misconstrue what this actually means. It's legitimately mentioned in the book Save the Cat that you don't have to make the character a good person. Pulp Fiction is a great example of, one that was used in Save the Cat, and what Blake Snyder mentioned was that the characters were funny, and that was a big way to get you on board. You don't necessarily have to, have your character very well liked to have a Save the Cat moment, but it seems like that's where a lot of movies are trending. It does feel like we have right now, very few unlikable protagonist or like, mixed protagonist of kind of likable and unlikable. You don't necessarily need them to be likable, but you do need them, at least according to Snyder, you need to at least have the audience on their side. And it could be an example of the advice in the book is actually pretty sound, but people maybe don't get as creative with it as they probably should, which might be the case in a lot of these scenarios. At the same time, though, I think it would probably be unfair to completely get rid of the structure altogether. I don't know if that's the solution. I'll make the comparison to when you're dieting. If you're on a keto diet or whatever diet you're on, part of what makes that work isn't just because the diet itself is smart, but part of what makes it work is you're just paying attention to what you put in your body. And if you're paying attention to what you put in your body, you're probably more likely to be healthier. The reality is, if you're writing a screenplay and there's a specific section that says this is where you have to adhere to the premise of the promise of the premise kind of thing, well, then you're going to make sure that you give the audience what they paid for and get scenes in there that the audience thinks that they want to see or does want to see. If there's a Dark Night of the Soul moment, it's probably going to create a good scene, right? So just because you're forcing yourself to make those things, you probably are going to end up with a better screenplay than if you weren't a great writer and just wrote something. It probably wouldn't do as well. There's obviously been amazing movies that did not follow the save the cat formula. Of course, this book hasn't been around forever, right? But it can be a good way to improve a maybe mediocre or bad script. So, okay, I don't think it's that. You can argue that it's, it can maybe have people, it can stunt creativity, but I would very much say, on the other hand, it doesn't necessarily stunt creativity. In fact, it can cause you to be more creative in certain areas as well. Yes, if you're not as creative in certain aspects, it can make a movie worse, but I don't think that it is the end-all be-all reason why, people hate formulaic movies is the formula itself. But I have another theory that's somewhat related. When you're watching a movie, you want to watch a movie, and really you want to experience that movie. You want to feel immersed in the experience. If you see a camera in a reflection of a car door, it takes you out of the movie. And it's pretty much universally agreed that that is a flaw, right? Pretty much everyone agrees that, the filmmakers should do what they can to not have the camera get reflected in a car window. Sometimes it happens. It's hard to make a movie, right? But, every now and then you see it happen, and it takes you out of the movie. It's usually a flaw. Not a big one, but a flaw. Well, why? I mean, we know it's a movie, but at the same time, we're all kind of pretending we don't, right? We're trying to feel immersed in the experience, and if we see the camera, we can't pretend. And I think the same thing is due to structure. If you're watching a movie and there's on-the-nose dialogue, something like, a character comes up and says, well, please, Jim, you're my brother. We've known each other for all our lives, and we used to work at the supermarket together. How could you say that to me? Then you're going to say, okay, that takes me out of the movie. If a plot point feels forced and it feels like a forced midpoint, well, then it's going to take you out of the movie. So is that it? I think it is in many ways the opposite of what people think. Could it be that it's not the formula at all? Well, if it's not the formula, then what? I don't think people actually hate the structure. I think they hate the idea behind the structure. Here is my theory. If someone wants to tell a story about being a second-generation immigrant, like let's take Elemental, right? Elemental followed Save the Cat pretty much to a T. I think every aspect of Save the Cat was used in that movie. But it uses a formula to tell a story. That, I think most people don't have an issue with. You have an idea for a movie, this is a way to make that movie as good as possible. I think people hate the idea behind Save the Cat in general. In the book itself, it tells you not to do that. It tells you don't use something from your childhood. Use something that's sellable. That's the issue. It legitimately mentions in the book how you should start with an idea that you think you could sell and then make the movie around that. There's a popular expression that I can't quite remember the exact wordage of right now, but something along the lines of, it's more important to have something important to say than know the best way to say it when it comes to filmmaking. It's better to have something meaningful to say, even if you don't, perfectly have the midpoint at page 55, right? Most people would, I think, appreciate that movie a lot more, and I think that's part of the issue. You can make a good film if it doesn't have an obvious structure to it. If it has something to say, it's still going to be an interesting movie. But you can't make a good film that doesn't have an obvious structure and also has nothing to say. It's not the structure that's the problem, it's the structure that's being used to create the problem. It's getting soulless movies sold, essentially. A lot of blockbusters have very little to say. The main concept might just be something about, hey, it's about family. The very cliche themes, right? Maybe the true adventure was the friends we made along the way. There's nothing inherently wrong with that, but ideally you would like it to be something where that's an actual, message the filmmakers are trying to come across. And again, it can work. Puss in Boots 2 had that exact thing, and I really like that movie. So, it's not necessarily a bad thing, but it feels like you're just throwing something on at the end to make the movie sellable. That's where it becomes a bad thing. Another thing specifically mentioned in Save the Cat is that the formula is made to mass appeal to audiences, and with the addition of something like Rotten Tomatoes that basically suggests that something with broad appeal is better than something with slightly less broad appeal, it makes sense financially for a lot of film studios to go out and try and, save the cat, use the formula, use the math problem to try and get as much broad appeal as possible, even if it's not something that's going to change your life when you walk out of the theater. Simply put, people game the system with structure to push across less interesting concepts. Studios use structure to make content films, eliminating an important aspect of filmmaking, which is the point of the film in the first place, the artistic vision of the film. But what can we do about this? Honestly, I can't think of anything. I guess money is a way to get people to stop doing this, right? Money's a way to get studios to stop doing this, and giving talented filmmakers money has started to become a lot more profitable. Listen, I'm not saying that all of a sudden the Sundance and the Cannes Film Festival darling movies are the ones that are making hundreds of millions of dollars. We still haven't gotten there yet, and maybe the better way to phrase it is the popular movies that are usually popular have become a lot less popular, right? A lot of big budget movies have bombed this year. Meanwhile, movies like Barbie and Oppenheimer, as well-known kind of event that was, which I don't even think it is necessarily because they were on the same day, but that certainly helped. But just in general, I think part of the factor was, yes, they were existing properties, but they got talented filmmakers behind it with specific visions, and they let those filmmakers make the movies they wanted to make. Is getting rid of structure the solution? Is getting rid of the formula the solution? I actually don't think it matters. After all, you're still watching this video, despite the fact that I followed the Save the Cat beat sheet completely up until this point. I used every single aspect of Save the Cat up until this point, and I'm going to finish with it as well. The solution is getting rid of the soulless filmmakers, hiring ones who actually have something to say, and the only way that'll happen is if people start watching new and unique projects, which it looks like it's already starting to happen. At least that's what I think. What do you think? Let me know in the comments below. Always love hearing from you, and of course, as always, thanks for watching.